Welcome to the WNBF UK podcast.
Hello and welcome back to season 3 of the WNBF UK podcast with me, Sarah Glanville, as your host. I wanted to kick off this year's season with a bang. So who else would be our episode 1 guest? The first teen to win overall, I think, ever, and our teen British bodybuilding champion. Welcome to the podcast, Josh Campbell. How are you?
Thank you very much. I'm brilliant. Thank you for having me. It's an honor. I'm excited for it, obviously, to talk over everything like the experience and first timers, and hopefully give out some advice to some of the teens as well. Because it's a very cool sport and it's a very cool thing to be involved in. So hopefully shed some light on it all.
Yeah, thank you for joining us on this episode. Like I say, there's this kind of the perfect person, I think, to kick it off because of your incredible first season last year. I think we'll just kind of jump right in and get started. What inspired you to choose WNBF UK for your debut show?
So originally, I hadn't planned to start competing until like late August because I wanted to do some like British Championship shows, which were later on in the season. And I was like, I'm not too sure like when I'm going to be like in a good spot to actually be competing. We didn't know whether I would be like ahead of the game with fat loss or behind to chase my tail. But then I started to come in really quickly and we were like, right, let's go for it, let's do something. And then we seen obviously Finn Kelly, my coach. He has a lot of experience just with like his own clients competing in past and everything. He's been around all the shows and he was like WNBF has ran very well. The shows like they're actually enjoyable. They kind of put a lot of emphasis on that. And it was like it's a first timer show, and I was like, nice, because it meant I knew everyone else there was just as nervous as I was because like the thought of going into the show and me being the one that just looks daft on stage and like everyone else is perfected the posing and everything. I'm like obviously I've done as much as I possibly could for it, but going in thinking right, everyone else here is also terrified. Like it does make you feel a lot better. So yeah, it worked out very, very well. It was a great day. So yeah.
It's interesting. I didn't realize, or I guess we'll talk about this as we go through the podcast, but that you were kind of already thinking, I want to get to British finals level, which is really exciting. And yeah, I think the points you've made about it being like that shared experience where everyone's in the same boat is really important. You say you were coming in quite quickly. How was your prep leading into the first show? Sounds like it went pretty smoothly.
Yeah, so like I started in a pretty lean position. Like I wasn't too heavy or like soft. And that was mainly due to kind of like digestion issues. Like I've always had a very dodgy stomach since I was like a little kid. And then eventually get diagnosed with IBS like towards the back end of the off season because it was like pretty rough. So we couldn't push food massively, like, and we couldn't get it way too high. Body weight wasn't way too high. I started off prep in 73 kg, I believe. My kind of best look on stage was 64 to 65. The first show, the first timers, I think I was around that 66 mark. So I still got like a good bit leaner since then, or after that, sorry. But it was good. Like it was kind of smooth sailing for me simply because like my homeostasis and like my just kind of norm is relatively lean anyway. Like before starting the gym, I was always the guy that was just skin and bone, like had abs but no muscle. It was just straight. I was just very skinny. So coming down and being leaner, like I actually felt a lot better. Like in my off season, I was always a lot more uncomfortable, like pushing foods, and I didn't really enjoy it. But that's all I knew. So I was like, I had no clue what I was going to look like, anything. I'd be like, I don't know if I'm just going to look teeny here. And I was quite scared at the fact that starting prep at 73 kg, I was going to be on stage at like mid 60s. I was like, I'm going to be teeny. I must be so small. But realistically, at the end of the day, like as it kind of proved at the time in that show, like weight or size or anything doesn't necessarily win the shows. So Finn was trying to like tell that to me through the prep, and I was like, oh no, but what if, what if? But eventually, obviously, at the time, it went well. But the prep itself, like it was good. It was a case of again kind of smooth sailing, like cardio in straight off the bat, food down, like trying to get a bit of weight off at the start, like while we have like more opportunity to do so, and slowing rate of loss down as time goes on. And the good part was I was coming in too quickly, so every Sunday I had a refeed and it was a five guys. every Sunday. So like prep was just made so much better with that. But yeah, it was good. And coming into the show, like I didn't tell anyone about it, and I'm like extremely kind of active on Instagram, and like it's always posting my stories every single day. And I was like, I don't know how I'm going to kind of cover this up. So like I went down, and Finn's other client Douglas was competing, and I was playing it off as like, oh, I'm just going down to support Douglas. It was quite hard to kind of keep it secret, but I think that also helped, like not having anyone knowing, not any pressure being on myself. And I think that's a big thing for a lot of people, is to not put way too much pressure. Obviously, you want to do well, but to the point where it's going to make you very nervous and anxious and stress out, that's only going to create a more stressed out, watery say look on stage. So yeah, it was good. After the first show, that's when things started to get pretty rough, because obviously holding stage condition is the real hard part. But yeah, it was good. A very enjoyable prep.
Yeah, good. I'm glad that you enjoyed your first experience. I think that's really important as a first timer, is that
Definitely.
you want to push to be competitive, and of course you have been, but you also want to enjoy that, because as we spoke about briefly before the podcast started, it's a sport of longevity, and you want to stay in it. You want to continue to keep coming back. I'm really interested on the point that you made about keeping it to yourself, and maybe that helping take some pressure off you,
Mhm.
because you also mentioned thinking about getting to British finals level, and that obviously involves competing on stage and qualifying, and that in itself is quite a lot of pressure to put on yourself. So I guess what really motivated that decision to maybe not share with everyone that followed you on Instagram that you were going to do WNBF UK First Timers as your first show?
I thought it would be really cool if I won the class, so I could just be like, just popped up on Instagram, and I ended up doing that, and I was like, that's cool. But obviously, that wasn't like necessarily the main reason. It was just a case of keeping it to my very close, like say, friends and family. Not really anyone knew about it, but as Finn kind of like would tell me, right, if you're all stressed out and you're overthinking things, like it's not going to be a great experience. Like if you're so nervous and worrying about things and people are messaging this and that, like it is going to kind of ruin the experience a little bit. So just trying to keep that to myself, I did feel like made it more kind of like it was just more real, the experience. I wasn't too busy like answering Instagram messages all the time and stuff like that. It was like I could actually soak in the moment, like on the day, and not have to worry about anything. So I'm happy that I made that decision. The show's after, like everyone knew obviously, but like doing that we kind of like sneaky one at the start, I enjoyed it.
How did how did it compare then once the pressure ramped up? Because then there's also the weight of
Yeah,
expectation.
of
So
course.
yeah, how was it in comparison in the next shows?
It was rough because, like, obviously I won the teens class, but then went on to win the overall. So then going into the next show, there was people messaging me going, "Yeah, that overall's yours. Yeah, easy, easy." And I'm like, No, it's not. It's like people, obviously, like it's just people being nice, but like it was people that don't necessarily know bodybuilding too much, and like they see me do it once, and then they expect me to do it again, and I'm like, that's a whole lot of pressure on me. So I had to put on like my story and my Instagram, like, do not expect me to say win an overall, because I'm not expecting myself to win an overall. There's going to be people on there that have trained 10, 15 years like consistently, and like they're going to have more muscle maturity than me, get into better condition than me, overall just be a more advanced bodybuilder. And that's simply a case of time. As you were saying, it's a long sport, kind of a marathon, not a sprint. You can't really like cheat in bodybuilding, natural bodybuilding. Sorry, there's no quick fix or way to get to somewhere. It's just time and effort. So yeah, it was hard going into those other ones, but it was just a case of like managing expectations. And even going into that second show when I didn't win the overall, I was a bit annoyed. I was like, I should have won that because I done it last time. Like, am I getting worse? But like again, it's even if I was significantly better, in which I was a lot leaner. If you go up into a class where there's a much, say, like there's some people that have been there that have like 10, 15 years again experience, it's just kind of your luck. Like even when I compete in 2026, I'm going to be significantly better. But if there's some monster that I'm up against, I might not even win my class. So it's like managing those expectations and realizing that, it's not always going to go your way. And like people on social media need to kind of know that. So like I kind of put that out there so that I didn't like expect everyone to think, oh yeah, you're going to do this and that. So it helped manage it a little bit.
Yeah, I think it is. It's in two parts, isn't it? It's managing your own expectations. And I think you've clearly, the way you've spoken there, you've got an incredibly mature perspective on it. Not in a patronizing way, but for your age, you've got an
Oh,
incredibly
thank you.
mature perspective on it. Because it's like you say, when you achieve a level of success, you almost hold that yourself to that standard.
Yeah.
But yeah, also managing the expectations of those who look up to you and respect you and follow you, like come after you and follow you, because I think also people feel like that's something that they can strive to achieve, which of course is what we want. We want people
Yeah.
coming those with that ambition, but not being disappointed when you turn up in your best, because the sport of bodybuilding is you could turn up and anyone could be there, right?
Exactly. It's like
Like you've
no
come and
matter.
you disrupted the whole show last year. People who have a lot more time under the game and experience under their belt in terms of training.
Yeah, it's obviously genetics play a role as well. And like as we were kind of discussing again before we started recording, like we are both, not to sound bad, but like relatively genetically gifted, like shape and structure and stuff like that. And that's always going to be one of the like biggest driving factors as to where you place in a show. If you've got really good shape, structure, and it kind of flows well, that's going to overpower a lot of things. Now, it doesn't matter, obviously, if you're not in condition, you come in and you look as if you're like 12 weeks out. But if you've got like relatively good condition, relatively good muscularity, but you've got like outstanding shape, it's most of the time going to beat the person that's more heavily muscled and don't kind of look quite as nice in general. Obviously, it depends on the class and stuff as well, but it's a case of trying to, again, like manage those expectations for like the younger generation, and even like people that kind of apply for coaching with me after seeing what I've done. They're like, yeah, I want to win everything this season, and I'm like, and they might be 15 years old and have trained for a couple months, and I'm like, you need to spend time doing the basics first and enjoying and loving bodybuilding itself before even thinking about competing. It is actually kind of enjoying the whole experience and not being too like tunnel visioned on, all right, I'm going to win this, because that's not the enjoyable part. It's like actually doing the prep and doing something that you're proud of. A lot of people, I feel like, struggle with that, and that's another hard thing just with managing expectations as, say, a coach, or just like speaking to someone and like they say it to you and you're like, oh, should I tell them, should I not? And it's hard, you know, like, but I think that's something that a lot of people can take away, and especially a lot of teens, because some of them, again, like might not have that kind of more mature mindset as to like, just sorry, I'm going to give my all, and if it's my best, I'm going to be happy with it. It's like, I need to have a trophy, I need to do this, I need to do that. It's like actually enjoying it and bringing your best. And even if you say do another show and you don't look as good as I was mentioning, or sorry, you look even better, but you don't place as well, like that's a win still. Like you look better yourself, it's you against you, sort of. And I know that sounds like cringy and you hear it all the time, but it genuinely is true. So
Yeah.
yeah.
It's a classic because it works. It's the truth.
Yeah,
People say it all
exactly.
the time because it's the truth. But yeah, I think that's bang on. It's it's I think, like we said, it's a sport of longevity, and the longer you're in it, the better you should get. But
Mhm.
there's always going to be someone who turns up on stage that you can't prepare for, you don't
I
know,
see you
like,
can't control it,
and
can you?
you can't control it. The only thing you can control is you bringing your best, and I think that's a really important message to get across, Josh. So, do you want to talk us through that first show day experience from your perspective? Like, was it what you expected when you decided you
Okay.
were going to sign up for a show?
Yeah, so to be honest, like I had no clue what to expect. I was like, I have no clue what I'm going into here. Because like obviously I've been training for like say 2 years before that. I'd been like considering the thought of bodybuilding stuff. Then I started up with Finn. He was like, right, let's do it. Then we mapped it out. I was like, oh, this is getting a bit real here. Like it's all starting to come together. Then by the time I knew it, bang, first show. And I went down, travelled down, so it was London area, it's Camberley, it was Londonish. Obviously I'm up in Glasgow, so got the train down, travelled down there, got the Airbnb. Finn looked after us very well. Then went to the venue itself. So we had like a long drive down. I got my tan done at like five, no, half four in the morning, because I got it done through Nicola A1. So very early in the morning, because we had to travel from Loughborough down to Camberley. So very early morning tan, headed there, got to the venue, nerves were starting to build up, and I was like, oh no, no, no. Because realistically, when you think about it, like it was a big venue as well. It's a really good venue, but it's a big crowd. And I seen it when I went to go and look at like how to map things out. I was like, where is everything? I was just like, oh no. But realistically, again, it's like trying to manage like your nervousness, your anxiety, your stress, etc., because it's only going to have a negative impact on your look. So it was just a case of trying to chill out, but obviously because like I'd been like sat in the back of Finn's car and we were all traveling down, it was a little bit stressful. Like stress levels were a teeny bit higher, like going into that teens class, because teens is the first class of the day for anyone kind of doesn't know. It usually is for most kind of shows and federations, but teens was the first class of the day, and that made it even worse as well. I was like, I'm the first one on stage, and I was like, I don't even know what it looks like to go out. And Finn was like that. You'll be fine. You've practiced for this. See, as long as you are practicing, you're posing day in day out, and it kind of becomes like second nature. You're going to be fine, but just make sure that you obviously put the practice in to do that. But I went out and it wasn't what I necessarily expected when I went up the stage, because people don't realize how bright the lights are. Like, see, when you're on stage, you literally can't see anything. Like the crowd, it's just black because it's just these really, really bright lights. So like they were just calling out the poses and stuff, but then I would be ready to go into my next pose and they'd say like, all right, you switch with you, and I'd just still be standing there, and then they'd like repeat the number, and I was like, oh, that's me. I need to move around, but because I was so nervous, it was like I was just like literally just hitting the pose, thinking we're keeping my cord switched on, doing this and doing that. It is hard, but like once I got off stage, I was like, that was really cool, and like see the like when we're getting moved about and stuff. And then the routines, obviously doing them, that was the scary part, because I like walked out and there was like a millisecond of silence and it just threw me off completely. Like that wee second before the lights hit me, I could just see all the crowds and it was like silent. I was like, oh no, 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 no. Very, very scary. So going out and doing the routine, and like that kind of gave me like a mind blank when I got like that big rush of nerves. And I was like about to go into my first pose and I was like, I don't know what it is. I don't know what to do here. So eventually caught myself, went into the routine, done all that, then came back out and won a teens class, and it's a very, very good feeling. Just to even be there again, like the experience itself was great. But winning that teens class was phenomenal. That was like the first kind of rush and like dipping my toes into actually what it feels like. And then after that, it was a case of just chilling out for the rest of the day, because the overall's not till later on in the night, again, for anyone who doesn't know. So between teens and the overall, I kind of slept, to be honest, through the most of it. So like to keep myself nice and fresh, like again, sitting in the back of that car, like with my knees pretty close to like my face, because there wasn't much room. My legs were a little bit fatigued, but because I was just laying down, kind of feet elevated a little bit, sleeping throughout the rest of the day, that overall, that's when things kind of came to life a little bit more and brought a better package. Then, like, I've recorded the video for YouTube, so if anyone wants to kind of see all of this, you can go back and watch that on my YouTube channel. But I was saying in the YouTube video, I was like, yeah, there's absolutely no chance I'd go for this overall, because backstage, looking at everyone, I was like, "Ah, like, how is that even possible?" Like there was some guys there, I was like, that's natural. Like I think one of the guys was like 95 kg or so stage lean, and I was just like, that's crazy. And then I got called out for the overall, the winner, and I was just like, it's like so surreal. It was a really, really good feeling. And then afterwards, like I kind of stayed on stage, and all the judges and everyone there that was working, like everyone came up and we were all kind of chatting about things. So it is one of my best kind of memories of the season in general. It was really, really good.
Yeah, it sounds like a really positive day. And I guess it's really interesting at and I think an important point that you brought up about kind of that, almost, although you wanted to control the stress and the nerves, like they were still there because
It's
it's a
inevitable.
new
Yeah.
experience. So there's literally nothing you can do when your body is telling you to be nervous.
Yeah. And then
I,
you're trying to think about not being nervous. So then you're thinking about being nervous, and then you get more nervous, and it's like a
it's
vicious cycle.
It's like, honestly, every single night before show, and I'm talking even the shows last year that I was presenting, right? I'm sitting going, just fall asleep, just fall asleep. Like, you need to sleep because you want to be fresh. And it was
Yeah.
like, my brain won't turn off. So it's like, the more you almost think about it, the worse it gets. But it was almost like for you, doing that team class and obviously doing well, and then getting into the overalls and deciding to turn up for the overalls, which was, we're really glad you did, obviously, for obvious reasons.
Mhm.
But yeah, you had all that pressure almost taken off you because you got out there, had the experience, you knew what to expect, and then you were almost like, this is going to be great fun to go stand on with the boys that are,
Yeah,
you know,
100%.
mature than me. And then
Yeah.
the pressure came off, and as you say, your physique came to life.
Because that's the thing as well. Like a lot of people will say like the day after their show they look a lot better, but it's not because they've like ate loads of food after it. It's because they've just had a massive stress drop off and they hold less like kind of fluid because of it and just look a lot better. But I definitely was a lot more chilled going into that overall because I was thinking I was going in with the mindset of literally just I'm going to go have some fun here, but there's no chance I win it. Like even to one of the boys, Ben, who won the junior class, he was at me like, this is just a DLC. This is a little like expansion pack. We just get to go have some fun, and I was like, yep, exactly. Like let's just do it. But then I heard Finn shouting at me. And he was like, "Yeah, you've got a chance here." And he just started screaming at me like anytime like one of my quads would get like slightly switched off, he's like, "Quads, quads," screaming at me, so making sure that I was on the ball. But like when I heard him get like actually serious about it, I was like, "Oh, maybe I should really, really start to go for this." Because again, I was just thinking about having some fun and just kind of like enjoying. Obviously, I still did enjoy it, but I was like, right, I actually need to kind of lock in here and go for it. And obviously, it paid off. It was good.
Amazing. So winning the overall title, we obviously know this is an amazing achievement. What was your feedback after the show? Because we all get feedback, and even when we're the best on stage, we get feedback that we need to work on. So what was your feedback, and how did you use it to approach the rest of your season?
So feedback was that condition was a strong point, and like we kind of knew that going into it. Obviously I wasn't like as conditioned as I could have been because it was just earlier on in the season. And I hadn't been in prep for I'd only been in prep for 13 weeks at that point. So like I was coming in very quickly, and my prep was 32 weeks in gen like as a whole. So it was like say probably 20 weeks of like holding stage condition after that. Which again is another story, but that was pretty brutal. But going into it, like after I got the feedback, they said condition was good, like shape and structure was good. Obviously like there's always room for improvement muscularity wise. But the condition was a 2, and I think a 1 was the best. So I was like, right, I'm getting a 1 next time. So we knew that I could come in like more conditioned just with like extra time and kind of keeping things slow, like rate of loss wise, because we had no time to rush or no reason to rush, sorry. And the next show after that was 5 weeks later, and it came in like quite significantly sharper after that. So feedback wise, like it was mainly for myself and for Finn, like right condition was really good, like especially say for a teen. But it was like we're not thinking just like, oh yeah, I want to be good for a teen. We want to be like really, really good. And like I walk onto an overall stage and someone goes, "Oh my God, look at that." Like the glutes, the hamstrings, like that's kind of what we were striving for. So it was a case of, yeah, very happy and satisfied with the say result, but definitely still more work to kind of do. And even the same thing kind of applies now. Like after finishing the season, a lot of people have asked me like, "Oh, like what are you going to do now? You've kind of completed it all." I'm like, "No, I've not. There's still loads and loads of room to improve with this again long game of natural bodybuilding." So, yeah, that's sorry again tangents flying off it.
No, perfect. Great answer. I think
Thank you.
it's really important to know all of that. So I guess we already spoke about kind of the mental pressure then moving into the next shows, but where was your mindset at? Like you obviously were wanting to get to British finals. Did you think British titles, was that always the British team titles? Was that always the aim?
Yeah, so when I started prep, like Finn sent over the first check-in, or like their final check-in in my off season, and it was like, I want your eyes to be set on some British titles this year. It was like you can take them if you want it. And obviously he was just saying that to make me kind of like I get all fired up like, yeah, let's have it. Like he knew that I was going to be good, but you can never tell until you start to kind of see someone come down and how lean they can get, but you realistically can't tell until they're on stage. Like you can still have someone that looks great, but they look very awkward, unnatural on stage, and like it just doesn't go well together. But as soon as he seen me on stage, like and on that day, he was like, yeah, it is definitely on. So like going into that day again, like I literally had no clue what was going to happen. I didn't know if I looked like a little skinny child or whether I was worthy of like going into a show itself. But after it, obviously, I felt a lot better and a lot more confident in what I could bring, and I knew that I could get significantly better. So I was like, it's just a case of like the next say 2 shows that I had were both qualifiers, and then it would be on to finals from there. So I was like, I want to win all of my teens classes pretty much for the season after like that first one. And I was like, if I can take any overalls, that's like an extra kind of added bonus, especially an overall in like a non-first timer show. Obviously, it's still sick to win the first timer show, but I was like, I want to have a full open show with like experienced athletes and see if I can take an overall, which I did eventually do at the Heart of England. So that was another really cool one because again, like overall wise, like that was my big kind of goal. Like after, it's a hard thing as well. Like I know we were talking about managing expectations and stuff, but it was like if I didn't win one of those team classes, I would have been like very upset. And when I did win them, I was like, right, that's that done. Doesn't matter. Now it's overall time. And if I didn't win overall, I'd be like, oh, that is what it is. But I would never really process like the team win. And it wasn't until like the end of the season, I was just in the gym one time, and I just kind of actually deep in and thought about it, and I was like, oh, wow. You don't realize at the time because like obviously I'd done a lot of shows. I was like so kind of tunnel visioned into each one after it. Like I would do one, I would do well, and I was like, right, it doesn't matter. It's on to the next one now. But until I actually finished the season, I was just sitting there. I was like, that's pretty cool. Yeah.
Well, I mean, how many people can say they've had like a clean sheet of
Mm.
wins? So it's an amazing achievement.
Thank you very much.
I guess this is a different question, but how do you feel that obviously now take some time out and you're going to come back at some point and it's almost going to be you're stepping into juniors at that point, I would imagine.
Yes. Yeah.
So different kettle of fish again, because there's a different group of people around you and the sport evolves very quickly. Where's your head at, I guess? How do you feel about that? Is there mental pressure for you thinking about that journey, or are you literally just focused on off season at the moment?
Yeah, so like a bit of both. There's going to be pressure because realistically, when I think about it, like going into this season, I had been training like for the enjoyment, like obviously still taking it very seriously, but not like it wasn't like kind of my entire like life. And obviously I'm an online coach now, so like everything kind of revolves around like bodybuilding, training, this and that. But going into it, I didn't really again necessarily have any expectations and know really what was going on. So like when I was competing, I didn't feel like way too much pressure. But now obviously after this season, everything's happened. Like Instagram's followers and kind of interaction has went up a lot. I've got a lot of people that kind of speak to me, follow me, and follow along with my journey now. Like starting prep, I think I was on around 1,400, 1,500 followers, and it's now like 30,000 plus. So it's like going into that next season, I will feel definitely some pressure. And like even though I've competed say 7 times because it's going to be 2.5 years later, I reckon I'll still get like that first show. Like the nerves will be there because it's been a little while since doing it. But like my focus just now is just like the day-to-day actions of just train well, eat well, look after myself, sleep. Like nothing necessarily changed after I finished prep. Like I feel like a lot of people have like this end goal of like say a certain show, then after that they have no goals, no nothing, and like prep finishes and they're just lost, like completely lost. And I was slightly worried about that as well. I was like, all right, I'm not gonna have like an immediate goal of all right, I've got a next show. Like, am I going to feel a little bit lost? But realistically, as I was saying, like I've got so far to go, like in the kind of realms of natural bodybuilding. When you look at, say, the WNBF World Championships this year, like with Dirk and with Benjamin and with Brian, you're just like, oh my God, like there's so long to go. So it's a case of I know that I need to be significantly better. So just doing the day in, day out actions, not overthinking like into the future way too much. Like literally just week by week, just making sure that I'm progressing within the gym, and that I'm kind of seeing the progress that I want to see. So yeah.
Amazing. I think when you get that flavor for like they get the taste for success, right? And you know you're very realistic, right? But you're realistic with your potential and you know what you need to do and where you want to go and where you've envisioned yourself and you see the path that other people have walked. So for you, it's like it is you're looking at Dirk and Benjamin and being like, wow, like that's possible.
Yeah.
Um, it's about breaking it down, as you say, to like the actions you can take every day, and that's all you can focus on, and all you can control is giving 100% every day. Like Steph always says to me, like when you go to the gym, like ask yourself what a pro figure competitor would be doing, and you need to do more than that. Like you need to be
Yeah.
working at that level to get to that
And it
level.
sounds like I mean it sound like cringy to some people, but like not kind of letting anyone outwork you, making sure that you're doing what you need to be doing, but at the end of the day, just improving yourself, doing better than what you done last time. It's not as if like coming out of that, I'm like, all right, I need to be doing this and this and this better in terms of like actually tracking my macronutrients and with other things, like because I was nailing down all those basics and those variables, but it's just doing it consistently, getting really strong in the gym. Obviously now having more body weight on me and being in a much better position. Like off season wise, it is very hard coming out of a prep to kind of just like just look at yourself and see all these lines start to disappear, and it's like it can be very tough on you mentally. kind of like psychologically, but knowing that that extra, say, body weight and body fat is going to be productive in terms of my training performance as I get, say, heavier, I get stronger at applying new muscle tissue itself, like knowing that that's happening over time. Again, it's tough to see myself like lose, like, say, lines in my glutes and stuff. I'm like, oh no, as if that's like the norm, but because you see it for so long and so often every day, you're like, oh yeah, as soon as you start to see it go, you're like, am I getting fat? And you don't necessarily know what's going on because your vision and your perspective of everything is so skewed once you're like in that position. But knowing that I'm going to be putting on extra body fat, but that's going towards like a good kind of reason and actually growing and improving, then I'm all good with that.
Yeah. And I think it's like you said, like you come off stage and you need, because I think most of us who are competitive bodybuilders are goal-driven people. Like that is just
Yeah.
the psychology of how we work, is we need goals, we need something to strive towards. So it's coming into that like post-show period and establishing what that new goal is. And it has been for so
Away because the longer that you leave it, the longer that you just end up
100%.
eating whatever you want and not really doing much, and
Yeah.
it's a very kind of easy hole and trap to fall into. As a case of setting that goal straight away.
Absolutely. And it's something that a lot of people fall into. And sometimes that's part of people's journey that they need to switch off. But I know for me, like I came out of that and straight away knew what my next goal was. And I had to, you talk about losing the lines and being so used to looking at your visual as your goal, it has to switch to my performance needs to be the goal,
I
and
mean, for
come into
it's
the gym.
exactly what I say.
Yeah, yeah,
It's two different things, like not worrying and focusing too much on how you look on a certain given day, or like how like just like, oh yeah, I woke up this morning, I look like a teeny bit flatter or fluffy or whatever. It's like it doesn't matter. Is your training performance improving? If it is, and you've got a controlled rate of gain that's not out of control and all over the place, and you're being consistent with your food, then bang, perfect.
100%. And I think it's also important to like note, like obviously you mentioned earlier, you are someone who is naturally very conditioned. Like you just hope you're a lean physique, like naturally, and everyone's journey post show is a little bit different. So it's just about your performance feels like what that looks like on you may be
Mm.
very different to what it looks like on Josh or what it looks like on
Yeah.
Sarah. If your performance is nailed, you're feeling good, you're feeling strong, like that is the sweet spot for you in your off season.
I
Again, not
feel
comparing
like
yourself to other people.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people don't expect themselves to feel as if like after like say a week or two of eating more food, they're going to feel so much better, as if they've got like superpowers, but it doesn't happen. It's like it really does not happen. Like say even if you eat like loads and loads of calories and you're like, oh, I've got my extra body weight on, I'm just going to feel much better. You end up just feeling more like kind of sluggish and stuff. It's again just kind of being patient with it and not expecting way too much. Just day-to-day actions, as we were kind of saying, like just eating a little bit more, seeing that body weight come back up a little bit in a kind of controlled manner, like first say week to 2 weeks, like looking to get a little bit more back on so you can kind of be in a slightly better position hormonally, but then just like taking things as they kind of come and just trying to train better over time because you're going to have more stability around your joints and be a little bit stronger, but it's not going to be like, oh yeah, I was pressing 35s and now I'm going in tomorrow and pressing 50s because I'm a couple kg up and like I'm not. It doesn't happen like that, but it's trying to accept that and realize that it is just a case of getting back out of that and getting back into just like a more healthier position post show, and then that's when like things start to get a little bit better. But it's never going to be, and I feel like that's the thing. Like with a lot of younger people, they want like the easy, quick guide to getting something, and it's like they want it bang instantly. But you just need to be patient. I think that's something that I like to kind of push a lot with like the younger generation, especially like say the teens classes and stuff. As I was saying like earlier, like a lot of people kind of apply for coaching and they're like, yeah, I want to compete now, just because it's like quite a popular thing to do. And I'm like, you need to actually be patient and nail these things down first. So going into that off season and transition is definitely a hard thing, but like I assume like over time as well, like as I compete more and more, it'll become a little bit more natural because I realize what's coming and what it's the exact same thing goes with like going into that first show, like not really knowing what to expect. But once coming out of it, obviously like giving better advice to the people that actually have it coming to them going forward. So yeah, hopefully that helps someone.
So I'm sure it will. Looking forward into your future in natural bodybuilding, what aspects of your training or your nutrition or mindset, although we've obviously sound like we're pretty dialed in, but do you plan on like refining or focusing anything based on that experience that you've just had in your first season?
Well, I don't necessarily think like in terms of like say foods, training and stuff like that, like it is already pretty much on the ball. It's just a case of making sure training accuracy and numbers go up. Like there's no point in chasing down all these big new numbers if it makes me sacrifice form, execution, tempo, accuracy, etc. So making sure that like I keep on top of that and obviously sending like training clips over to Finn, my coach, so I can get a kind of second eye and opinion on it because it is very easy to get very sloppy with things when like you're like, all right, I need to get that number within the next couple of weeks, and then you look back at the clips and it just looks significantly worse than it did 4 weeks ago. So making sure that I stay on top of my kind of training execution food wise, so like a meal plan like itself works better for me instead of like if it fits your macros. Realistically, like I don't say like, oh, you need to have a meal planner if it fits your macros. Like usually a mix of both like works best for like say my clients. Like they have baseline meals, they'll have that. And then like if they want to have something else, like they can just match the macros for that meal and have something slightly different. But with myself, I think I mentioned earlier on that like before going into that competitive season, I was having a lot of kind of stomach issues. So just eating very, very similar foods like every day, like the exact same foods that causes less digestive stress for me. So that's something that I'm definitely going to try and kind of keep under wraps and trying to eat similar foods each day so it doesn't cause much kind of digestive stress. And then in terms of actually going into like the next season, so it obviously won't be until 2026, so I've got a lot of time to grow. It's exciting to think about. It's kind of daunting to think about as well because it is a long time. But like being more selective with my shows, so like a shorter season in terms of how many shows I do across like a kind of time span, time periods is definitely something that we'll be going to do next time. And just having like say a few shows instead of like 7 shows because it does definitely take a toll on your body by the time you get to your last show or two just don't look quite as good as you did at the start because you're just very fatigued. It's a rough feeling. I can see you like just kind of like empathizing, kind of knowing what that feels like because you were very similar, but it definitely does take a toll on your body. So a shorter season for next time.
Okay. And what do you know now what that shorter season is, or is it too far ahead to think about?
Yeah, I don't know obviously the kind of exact shows and dates and stuff, but I would like to do WNBF Worlds. Like when you go to like international shows, I think WNBF is the main one that actually like improves because like all the federations in the UK I think are brilliant. Like standard wise within WNBF, BNBF, UKTFP is great. But then like what they kind of feed into in terms of like international shows, I think it's the INBA. Like the standards doesn't kind of stay where it is in the UK. UK is a really high standard of bodybuilding because like I think the community and everything around it is really good. Like the kind of people that we've got at the top of natural bodybuilding, say AJ. Whereas like a lot of say other countries might not have that same thing. But with like with WNBF, when you go to that international level, and you get all these German freaky guys and all the Europeans, and you're like, oh God. And then you go to Worlds and it gets an even higher standard. Like I'll most likely do like a few different federations in the UK because again, standard's great, and I kind of want to do a lot of them. But when it goes to the international route, most likely do like the European show. I don't know what it's called, but I seen Josh Croggan do it. And Big Benjamin won like the
Yeah, the German WNBF show.
yeah. So hopefully it's something along the lines of that, and then the World Championships in Seattle. I don't know if it's Seattle every time, but it's obviously Seattle this year. So yeah, that's the goal and a pro card as well. That's what I'm on.
Yeah.
I'd like to.
Well, that sounds like an amazing season to come back to and
Definitely.
some good goals to kind of aim for. And yeah, the Worlds is kind of somewhere in the US usually, and it's like a
Yeah.
different city every time. So it was Seattle last year, I think it's Boston this year, it was LA the year that I did it. So
Mm-hmm.
who knows, maybe it'll be like New York or Las Vegas or
I'll be
something.
there, whatever it is.
Yeah, wherever it is, we'll have you there. So I know we've literally dropped so much advice through this episode. Like I think every answer you've been able to give a little golden nugget of advice, but is there anything that you would want to share to other teens who are aspiring to compete in natural bodybuilding this year or in future years to strive forward for success in their first season?
Yeah, so like the kind of main one I'd like to circle back to is just the enjoyment of the process as a whole before competing. Because if you just jump into it when you don't necessarily like not don't enjoy training that much, but like unless it's like your passion and you really, really do love it, and like the off season getting stronger again. Some people prefer off season, some will prefer prep. Like it is kind of, it just depends on the person, but making sure that you spend time like nailing the basics, like not missing a session, hitting your macronutrients each day, sleeping and waking up at a certain time pretty much each day, like very consistently, having a routine, having a structure. Because I feel like teens need to hear that a lot, because I know I've been there, like just waking up at like 1, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, like when you're off school, like when you've got a little bit more free time, like you don't use it productively, you literally just lie in bed or you play Xbox like 4 in the morning. Like nail down a routine, take things a little bit more seriously. Obviously still enjoy it. That doesn't mean you need to become a robot and like just suck all the actual enjoyment out of the process itself. But like be accurate, nail down the basics, get really strong, get a lot of muscle on you before you think about necessarily competing. But when you do compete, making sure that you have enough time and making sure that you're in a good position to start it. Because I feel like a lot of people as well will start prep like peak off season, like they're holding a lot of body fat, and it's like your prep is not going to be enjoyable in the slightest. Like it's going to get and suck all the enjoyment out of it, and chances are you might not even ever want to compete again because the prep itself was so rough, because you've got way too much body fat to pull off with such little time to do it. It becomes extremely demanding, and very, very difficult, and much more kind of demanding than it needs to be. Set yourself into a good position first. Like obviously start to work with a coach like before you start prep, like a good while before you start prep, because I feel like again a lot of people do that. It's like, hi mate, like I want to compete. The show's in 20 weeks. Can you prep me? And I'm like, I don't even know anything about you, like at all, how you like deal with everything, what you're like in an off season, where your food's at. Your food's not consistent. I can't pull your food down when you're not eating a consistent amount of calories per day. So I would say start to work with a coach like earlier than you think. Say like give yourself at least 6 to 12 months with them before you start prep, so that you can start it in an advantageous position, like when you're not too heavy, when you're lean enough to be able to keep the rate of loss slow. Because if you're trying to lose too much weight in the one prep, you're just going to lose muscle as well. You're not going to be able to retain a great deal, and it's why you'll see people like very, very fatigued with very little muscle, very little fullness, because they're chasing their tail with fat loss. I think what worked really well for me was the fact that I was ahead of the game, and we could kind of play around with like filling up protocols and kind of like a peaking protocol. We could try different things, see what worked best for me, having that 5 guys there and then assessing data, seeing, all right, where do I look best? Is it one day after that? Is it 2 days after that? Is it 3 days after that? Stuff like that. Like I feel like teens, obviously, if you're going into this without a coach, like you're not even going to like process or think about any of that. You don't necessarily know. So definitely, if you are a teen, get yourself a coach, someone that's reputable within natural bodybuilding, that knows what they're doing, that has experience, etc., going into that, so that they can tell you what to do and you execute. Because especially you know yourself how like skewed your perspective and your vision gets on your own physique. Like you could be absolutely peeled and you're like, I'm fat, I need to get leaner, I need to get leaner. But if you continue to push for that fat loss, you're going to lose fullness all life to your physique. So knowing when to push and pull, especially when you do have a longer season, like trying to keep me fresher and then pulling back down to get leaner and peak for the shows, it's a hard thing to do, and it's very hard to do yourself. So like a big piece of advice would be get a good coach that kind of knows what they're doing, and take your time, enjoy the process. Like don't become too robotic in it that you forget to actually enjoy it. Like take it day by day, enjoy the fact that you look the best you ever have in your life. Like obviously there's the cons of you feel absolutely terrible sometimes, you've got no energy, you've got nothing, like that's going to come with the prep, but you need to remind yourself that like prepping is your own choice. It's no one else is forcing you to do it, so don't be moany, don't make it your whole personality that, oh, I'm on prep and everyone should feel sorry for me. Like it's your choice, you're doing it, so enjoy it, soak the process in, and enjoy being on stage. Don't worry too much or stress too much, and again that's a lot easier said than done, because there's going to be a lot of nerves there. But on show day and just kind of leading up to it, don't put any pressure on yourself. Don't be like scouting out on social media like, who's competing against me? Who am I going to be up against? Because you're just going to end up like worrying about it and overthinking it, and you never know. Like there could be some guy that's never touched social media in his life, and no one knows him, and he comes up and he absolutely smokes everyone. Like anything can happen. So focus on yourself, enjoy the process. Obviously, there's the intricacies like the instance of kind of some stuff I was talking about there with actually being in a good spot. But overall, just enjoy it and soak in.
Yeah, I think that's like hit the nail on the head with the enjoyment piece the and enjoying the process of it. And I guess everyone's probably got a different perspective on this, right? But to me, bodybuilding, the sport of bodybuilding, isn't actually standing on stage and tan and doing the poses. Like, it's the training, it's the nutrition, it's the years that you
It's the
spend
structure that
building.
it gives you as well. Like you need to enjoy that first before you even think
100%.
about, all right, I just want to go on the stage.
And the
Yeah,
reality is,
exactly.
that so many of us find the sport through Instagram, and we see the sparkly show day experience, and we see people looking phenomenal, and that's what we want, right? Because that's what we see, and the shiny bit is the exciting bit. But like you've said, you've hit the nail so on the head with that, being that you're a bodybuilder because you bodybuild, and then the step on stage is the end.
And then you, exactly.
So I think that that's amazing advice. And if anyone has wants to compete or is thinking about competing, is really just putting in perspective where you are in the journey, and if stepping on stage and doing well is your long-term goal, maybe stepping on stage this year isn't the right thing. Maybe next year or even the year after is actually the right time for you.
Stage, and again, you hear this all the time as well, but the stage is always going to be there. Like, there's no major rush. Obviously, it depends age-wise, like whether you're going to be a teen or a junior, and if you might need to do it like the year before. But realistically, if you're very young, if you're 15, 16-year-olds, there is literally no rush to compete. Like, spend more time and be then a standout teen when you're 18, 19 years old, like, and you're like, oh my God, how's he got so much muscle and how's he so conditioned? It's usually because that's the one that's spent time in the off season growing, and not the one that's rushed into competing just because it does look glamorous and like, oh, I want to look like that, I want to be lean, and I'll get loads of messages from all these girls, and it's like, nah, you won't. It's just a case of like spending time enjoying bodybuilding, the process, and then reaping, say, the rewards of that and competing once you've kind of done all that stuff there.
Yeah. And I think it's known as well, like, that it's phenomenal that people find the sport as young as you did. Like, I think it's amazing that we have the opportunities for people like yourself to have stepped on stage as a teen. But natural bodybuilding is so long. Like, we have masters competitors, we have grandmasters competitors stepping on stage at 55 or older than that. I think we had older competitors in that last year. Like, think about your potential in the sport if you nail it from 15. Like,
Yeah.
if people haven't seen Benjamin Schuster's Instagram, like, go get checking that guy out. Like, he's a junior pro,
Yeah,
world
ridiculous.
championship pro.
World champion at 21, but that's obviously kind of like freak of nature, like 1 in a million type thing. Like, not everyone is going to do that. And again, it's trying to be realistic with whether you do have the genetics or not. Because scroll down on Ben's page and you'll see him at 13, he just looks like a normal child. Then at 15, he's on stage hitting a crab, and like his delts are just huge, his traps and everything. And like, there's no wonder that he is where he is right now. And he's been like religiously tracking his macros and training since he was, what, 14, 15 years old. And over time, that's obviously built him what he's got right now. But most people at the top of the natural bodybuilding game are like closer to, like, say, like 30 years old. It's just time. Like, it comes with muscle maturity, and then because you have more muscle maturity, you can get into that freaky condition. Like, I don't know, an example, say Chris Paling. I don't know if you've seen him. His glutes ridiculous, but obviously that's years and years and years. And I was chatting to him, and I was like, how long did it take you to actually get into that condition? Has that always been a thing? He was like, nah, that wasn't until I started to get into, say, my 30s, because I think he's like more towards like late 30s, maybe even early 40s. And he was like, yeah, it wasn't until a certain like time, like after years and years and years of training, that he unlocked like that kind of condition. It doesn't happen easily, and it's not even maybe like after a year, 3 years. Like, people think, oh, that's so much time. Like, if I say to someone, yeah, I'm competing in 2026, they're like, 2026, so like, you're not competing next year. And I'm like, no, it's natural bodybuilding. You need to spend time growing to actually be significantly improved.
100%. And I think with the maturity thing, it's like a granular look that men have as they get more mature. Like, even
Yeah.
if you can't get the condition and you have a good muscle density, there's just
hmm
like this granular look that you
You can
get as
tell.
you're more mature. But yeah, it's just exciting. I'm so excited to see you come back, and I'm really glad you're taking the time out. And there is no pressure. Like, there is no pressure for you to return until you feel like you're ready. So even now, say in 2026, like, I think that you'll be in a phenomenal spot then. But like you say, the stage is always going to be there, and just
Yeah.
whenever you're ready to come back, we'll all be waiting with bated breath, I'm sure.
Thank you. I'm excited.
Ready to see you at the World's team for absolute sure. Okay, is there anything else that you wanted to mention before we sign off?
I think we're all good.
Okay,
all
good.
happy with my side.
Josh, thank you so much for talking with me today. I know that the listeners are going to have got so much from that, and a lot of them will be prepping for their first seasons right now, and hopefully for our WNBF UK First Timers Championships. So thank you to everyone listening along. Our registrations are open for that First Timers and Novice Championships on the 16th of June and our Supernaturals Open Finals on the 6th of October. A big thank you to our headline sponsor CNP. We couldn't do any of this without you guys, and we're going to be back with episode 2 of the WNBF UK podcast in a few weeks' time. Until then, you can enjoy any of our previous episodes on Spotify or on YouTube. Have a great few weeks, guys. Thanks again, Josh. This has been the WNBF UK podcast.
Thank you very much for having me.
Check out CNP, our sponsors, and sign up for our events at WNBFUK.com.